Something totally undeniable is that Arcane, or Arcane, however you prefer to call it, is a work of art. Seriously, I love this series with all my soul, it's crazy. I have several videos on the channel talking about it, in fact, and I only have good words for this production. It was so good that it far exceeded the biggest barrier it had, which is being a series coming from the lore of Runeterra, or, in other words, from the universe of League of Legends. Sadly, because of this infamous game of the devil, many think that its story will be just as trashy and infected as the video game it comes from, but this is not true. The lore of League of Legends, or rather the lore of Runeterra, which is the universe that houses the lore of the characters, is vast, rich, and extremely well built. Not for nothing, Arcane is so good. In my humble opinion, it's not even one of the peak stories of this world. Don't get me wrong, the story of Jinx, Bee, Kate, and Jace is so good it's almost too much. But the lore is so vast and beautiful that it falls short if we compare it to others in its own world. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to show you not one, but 3 stories. 3 parts of the lore from the world of Arcane, which, in my humble opinion, are better than what was presented in Arcane with Piltover and Thawne. And I plan to leave for the end what is, without a doubt, the best, by far. Without further ado, let's begin. Before we start, I want to make a brief disclaimer. I apologize in advance if any part of the lore I'm going to recount is incorrect or outdated, since most of the things I'm going to tell are old or I'll dictate them from memory, so there are probably several typos in this video. But it's not a big deal, as my ultimate goal is simply to superficially introduce alternate stories of this world. Anyone curious after watching this video should investigate further on their own. I don't aim to be a lore scholar. Number 1. The fall of the Shurima Empire. Shurima was a very ancient empire, approximately 6,000 years old, nothing less older than the Noxian Empire of today. It was an empire with an Egyptian aesthetic, desert, pharaonic constructions, and a lot of yellowish color. The main tool that allowed this empire to be so powerful was the Sun Disk, a magic-filled artifact that was used by the ancient Shurimans. The story, as with all empires, is predictable, having a time of birth and expansion, one of settlement, stability, and peak, and finally its fall. Both its birth and its stable phase, as well as its fall, are beautiful and excellent stories filled with charismatic and great characters. If a series were made of this story, it would be easy to fit in 3 seasons. 1 season about its creation, another about its stabilization with the Ascended, and a final apocalyptic season with its fall. The solar disk that I mentioned earlier, which was the epicenter of the Empire, was used to imbue trusted individuals with its power, turning them into Ascended. People with animal-like appearances, similar to gods, possessing godly powers compared to normal humans. They have large size, magical abilities, long life expectancy, and incomparable strength. All this 1,000 years after the birth of the Empire, so it was already quite well consolidated. I don't want to go into too much detail because I could spend all day talking about these stories. That's why, if you want to know more in depth about the lore, I will leave in the description some videos with more extended information about Shurima and the other posts of this video. Since I'm going to skip practically everything just to show you all this superficially, this story features many notable characters. First, we could outline a clear protagonist, Azir, the last emperor of Shurima. A self-centered man with great pride and who believed himself to be almost a deity, but without a bad heart and being very naive, despite his self-perception. Now we will see why. As a villain, we would obviously put Xerath the sorcerer. He was Azir's right hand. But his envy and Machiavellian mind led him to create a plan to dethrone the emperor and take all the power of Shurima for himself and even become an unstoppable Ascended. As cool added characters, we have the Ascended Guardian Brothers of Shurima, Nasus, and Renekton, the most tragic in this story. In my opinion, since once Xerath messed up, I rebel. Renekton and Nasus were the only ones capable of facing the threat and trying to contain the monster. Renekton heroically sacrificed himself by throwing himself with Xerath to be sealed together in a magical place. This devastated Nasus, his brother, but the worst is yet to come. And yes, oh yes. This series, moreover, could simultaneously have a subplot about the present, where Sivir, a descendant of Azir, and Cassiopeia, a vixen, are searching for the ancient empire of Shurima. In the present, the door is opened and both Sheraz and Renekton are released together, but unfortunately, poor Renek's mind was destroyed. He has become a vengeful monster, seeking to destroy his brother for supposedly abandoning him, even though it was his own plan all along. This pains poor Nasus, who is already a vagrant protector of a defunct, non-existent empire. Additionally, his brother, with a distorted perception of reality, is hunting him down to kill him. On the other hand, in the present itself, once these two are freed, Azir also manages to revive thanks to Sivir, his descendant, and with it he achieves ascension, thus becoming Azir the Ascended, the King of the Sands and the last Emperor. In the present, Shurima was nothing more than ruins, and its inhabitants were scavengers who would do anything for a handful of coins. Thus, the empire's origins, establishment, and downfall by Shiraz due to Azir's naivety. Thousands of years later, they could undoubtedly create a series that would surpass Arcane's after its revival. Number 2. The Freljord Wars. We go from a sand desert to a frozen desert. Freljord is a snowy, icy land home to gods such as Bolivar, Orn, and Anivia. This place is also very ancient, and we could say that the important part of the story begins with the birth of three sisters. Avarosa, the Frost Archer, Lysandra, the Ice Witch, and Serilda, the Wrath of Winter. These three had their own wars and adventures. But eventually, one of them, Lysandra, the Ice Witch, would make a pact with an alternate dimension known as the Void. Through the Watchers, this place is the origin of Runeterra's darkest, most dangerous, and abominable creatures. In fact, we could say that the greatest enemy of life and the greatest threat this world has ever had, has, and probably will ever have. Lysandra's pact was straightforward: great power and immortality for herself and her own in exchange for embracing the Void, in exchange for preparing the world for the arrival of the Void, and also having a non-aggression pact where the Void would spare the lives of the Iceborn after ravaging all of Runeterra. The thing is, this whole plan went to hell when the Watchers wanted to emerge from this world too quickly. To stop the monsters and undo the damage she caused, Lysandra sacrificed her sisters and beloved children from the ice to freeze the Watchers so they can't move forward, although unfortunately this ice is melting. And it is now the responsibility of the inhabitants of Freljord to prepare for when these enemies return and protect the world from this threat. A little more. Currently, Freljord is divided into three factions. Lysandra leads one group, while her reincarnated sisters lead the other two, Ashi for Avarosa and Seguani for Serilda. Obviously with a lot of conflicts between them. This place has many charismatic characters besides those mentioned, including Braum, Tryndamir, Olaf, Udyr, and Trundle. I won't go into details or the video would become too long, but believe me, they have nothing to envy the characters from Piltover or Zone. They are incredibly written and their stories are very dear to those familiar with the lore. Without a doubt, another story on the level of Arcane, or even superior. Number 3. The Noxian invasion of Ionia. Oh yes, friends, we are already at the highest level, the heavyweight, big words. I'm going to try to summarize this story, compress it as much as I can, because seriously, it's dense, and every detail is a work of art in itself. First, let's start with the main thing. Noxus is an intriguing empire, already somewhat familiar from Arcane. In Noxus, unlike, for example, Demathia, where your lineage decides whether you're high or low class, in Noxus, your effort equals your worth. If you manage to be a valuable pawn for the empire, you will rise in rank and become important. In Noxus, your success depends on your sacrifice and dedication, regardless of whether you are born to a shepherd or a general. They are conquerors. And at a certain point, due to multiple reasons, the Noxians decided to invade Honia, an Oriental-style region, mostly of the traditional Chinese type. Here, the first thing, what makes this story so rich are the characters and their conflicts. Darius, a powerful Noxian general, would do anything for his nation. A boy from humble beginnings rose through the ranks to become a high-ranking Noxian military officer by his own merits. And among many others, I highlight my favorite character from all this lore in terms of his story, and I'm referring to the lore of all Runeterra, and I'm talking about none other than Riven. The exiled Riven was from a humble family, but soon her innate combat skills stood out. Inevitably, her talent, whether she wanted it or not, would make her a weapon for the Empire. Being honored with possessing the Rune Sword, a powerful sword that can only be used by hands worthy of such power. She was always trained for combat and she didn't mind it, but what she saw in Ionia was not combat, it was a massacre. They were not fighting, they were killing civilians. She realized that something strange was happening. This was not what she had been told would happen. But even before she could rethink things, the Noxians attacked with a chemical weapon both enemies and their own soldiers. Riven was presumed dead but managed to escape. She, because of everything she was forced to do, couldn't handle the guilt and destroyed her sword with her own hands. This being a reflection of her soul and heart destroyed by murderous and ruthless leaders. Riven reached such a point of obedience that she even carried out the mission to kill a poor old man, whom we will talk about a little later. As for Ionia, where to start? I'm going to focus on two main branches, the Kinkou Order and the Order of Shadows, and the brothers Yasuo and Yone, starting with the orders. The lore of the Kinkou Order is like a dark seinen version of Kung Fu Panda, which is obviously godlike. The Kinkou Order had a leader and his son, Shen. This order is in charge of protecting the balance, as they consider this totally essential and there should never be an imbalance on any side, or bad things can happen. One day they adopt an orphan boy named Zed. Zed and Shen were raised as brothers. Being ninjas, periodically their father would pit them against each other for practice, where Shen always emerged victorious in the duels. His father would harshly reprimand Zed for always losing to his brother Shen, something that honestly is not very balanced on his part. This planted the seed of envy and hatred in Zed, who, desperate to beat Shen and gain his father's approval, stole some forbidden techniques. With the power of the shadows, he confronted and defeated Shen. But far from receiving praise from his father, what he received was a face of deep disgust and a permanent expulsion from the order. Zed, with an utterly unstoppable hatred, formed his own order of shadow warriors. He infiltrated the temple to steal the remaining shadow techniques and perfect his strength. In the temple, his adoptive father tried to stop him. Humiliated and destroyed by Zed, his father asked for forgiveness for being wrong. He shouldn't have pushed him off balance, as it sent him straight into a sunset, into the claws of darkness. But these apologies tasted little to Zed, who ended his father's life without regard. Shen arrived late and lost to Zed, cementing Zed's status as one of the biggest villains in all of Ionia. But there's a very beautiful plot twist, and that is that Zed deep down loves Ionia and wants to protect it at all costs. He hates balance because he thinks there will always be someone who will stand out, breaking that equality and that balance. That's why during the war between Ionia and Noxus, he decided to fight, but not for balance, no, but for Ionia and her people. In this way, Zed, being a villain, fought for Ionia during this war as a true hero, being one of the biggest headaches for the Noxians, along with his Order of Shadows. Regarding brothers Yasuo and Yone, I'll be brief as I'm leaving an amazing video about them in the description. Official cinematic about these characters, which tells their story in a summarized, animated but very accurate way. Both the animation and the setting, as well as what is told. It's beautifully summarized. I'll give you a brief overview and let you enjoy the video yourself. Yone and Yasuo are samurai brothers who love each other deeply but have very different personalities. Yone is a skilled, hard-working samurai who has earned his position through talent and effort. Someone who always puts his honor and duty above anything else, even his family. He believes honor is everything, and without it, life is not worth living. In contrast, Yasuo is an unprecedented prodigy, far surpassing Yone's talent as a samurai. He is immensely powerful, to the point that he nearly always fights with restraint. And he always puts the fight and his personal satisfaction above duty. Something that deeply disappoints Yone. During the Noxian invasion, Yasuo is tasked with protecting an elder. Yes, the one Riven killed. The problem is that Yasuo was very resentful and angry that he was delegated that task. He said that foolishly, angrily, and childishly, he left the elder behind to join the fight. And yes, just as you're thinking, the poor defenseless elder was killed by Riven. Moreover, Yasuo was accused not only of negligence but also of committing the murder. Because the elder's wounds match Yasuo's wind powers, as Riven handles similar abilities that can be confused with Yasuo's. In his escape, Yasuo is confronted by Yone, who, with a heavy heart, challenges him to a duel to the death. Yasuo tries to go easy, fighting with the Nido so that Yone doesn't die. But seeing that it's impossible to stop his brother, he goes all out and thus ends him. Yasuo wandered as a vagabond seeking redemption until a mysterious old man offered him the power to purify his sins. Listening to the old man led to things going terribly wrong for Yasuo, and the plot twist, I'm going to keep it to myself to force you to watch that video I told you about if you haven't seen it, so there it is. I'm skipping many characters like God, Irelia, Master Yi, Karma, Swain, and the Black Rose's influence. I could go on, but that would make the video excessively long, which is not my goal. Anyway, I don't know, what do you think of all this that I've told you? Obviously, being a very tight and simple summary that I give you, it's hard to compete with Arcane's cinematic spectacle, but I assure you, if these stories were given an adaptation, An opportunity like Arcane, at the very least, would be on the same level. And in my personal opinion, all three that I've mentioned would far surpass Arcane. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you would like more videos about lore, video games, and stuff like that, and see you in the next videos. Bye!